Hi everyone, my name is Deborah and welcome to the Edit by DH, specifically the Dee Unedited series. Welcome to the truth about the beauty industry part 2. If you haven't already watched part 1 or listened to part 1 for those of you on podcast, then please do check out part 1 because it explains a lot about the experience that I had as a makeup artist, my experience of working in the beauty industry. You guys have probably heard bits and bobs of my beauty industry experience. However, you haven't heard the full deep dive into my time in beauty. Even then, it's not a short episode or podcast. Trust me, a lot more happened. I've summarized part 1, so hopefully you'll find it interesting. Please do go watch that. The link will be down below. And this is now part 2, which is answering the questions that you submitted, that I asked you to submit, and kindly you did, so thank you very, very much. And like I said in part 1, there are some brilliant questions. Before that, for those of you who don't know, I've just briefly mentioned podcast. If you didn't know, I try to also upload onto podcast. So I don't know if it's available on all the podcast channels, but at least 1 or 2 is definitely available. So if you prefer listening to my episodes or Dee Unedited episodes on podcast, just know that there is that option. Say like when you're commuting, say when you're driving, maybe even a lullaby to fall asleep. So whatever you prefer, just know that there is that option. Otherwise, I know personally sometimes I like to listen, but then there's other times where I like to see the person that is doing the episode or podcast. I like to see expressions and hand movements, and I'm going to include photos, which I try to do as well with my other episodes. So obviously if you're listening on podcast, you can't see the photographs. So if that interests you, then switch over to YouTube. So just as a refresh, the questions that I will be covering in this episode, part 2, is: are people mean and catty in the industry? Is it a nice industry, or does it have the same negative feel about it as the fashion industry? What's the reality of working in the beauty industry? Does higher retail cost mean a superior product? The waste and how to deal with that as a consumer? How many products are original products versus companies copying others? Thoughts on influencers receiving PR products? How can I become a makeup artist / how can I work as a makeup artist? Have you ever met famous makeup artists or people in the industry? So, like I said, they are some brilliant questions, and hopefully I can answer all your questions for you today. If I've missed out anything, then please do let me know down below in the comment section. I'm happy to expand further down there. And obviously you're welcome to DM me, but sometimes I encourage comments because I feel like you might have a question or a comment that others can relate to. So it's just helpful, and sometimes helps me as well, because if I'm asked the same question by 5 different people in my DMs, I'm having to repeat the same thing 5 different times. Either way, my DMs are always open, and I hope you guys know that. So let's cover the first question. Are people mean and catty in the industry? And then there was a similar question, which I therefore tied into one. Is it a nice industry, or does it have the same negative feel about it as the fashion industry? So I actually covered a lot of that, especially based upon my personal experience in part 1. You can make your own mind up about whether it's a nice industry or not based on the experiences that I went through. I would say that you will inevitably have good and bad experiences like any other industry. There is no industry or job or career where it's going to be completely good or completely bad, right? There's always good and bad. It's just how much of that balance, like whether it's overall good with some bad experiences or overall bad with some good experiences. And I guess you could work for the same company, for the same team, but you could have completely different experiences, right? So a lot of this is subjective in the sense that it's based upon my experience and my opinions as well. But I'm not going to decorate anything. I'm just speaking from the heart. I'm just speaking the truth and trying to be as transparent with you guys as possible. I also do feel like there are more mean / catty people than those who choose to work in a library or say for a charity, which sounds obvious, right? And I met many mean people during the beauty industry, which you guys would have heard about if you listened to part 1. And one of those reasons is the reason I left the industry. In short, I was bullied by this one particular person who made my life miserable in this company. But it's also true that I met some amazing people, including some of my colleagues who ended up becoming friends. I've even made friends with the clients that I met whilst working or doing their makeup on, in these brands. So yeah, I met so many lovely people that ultimately the good always wins over the bad, right? And again, I met so many lovely customers. I met some horrible customers in Chelsea particularly. They're very snobby. Not just me, a lot of my colleagues were made to feel extremely small. Some of the ladies are a little bit out there, shall I say. And I always used to say to my team, if you can survive in Chelsea, you can survive anywhere. So that was a really interesting experience. But again, I met so many lovely customers, especially whilst I was working in Bobbi Brown. I loved meeting people and loved the trust that customers gave me when they sat down in my chair. You know how vulnerable it is to have your whole makeup removed by a complete stranger. You're sitting in a public place. You feel so bare and naked, and then you end up as a makeup artist, and I feel like it could be the same with hairdressers. The difference is hairdressers obviously have a hairdryer, so that is a barrier, but it's easier to build a rapport with your client for that reason. And some of the people, especially the women that used to sit in my chair and the things they used to share with me, it's an experience that you don't understand unless you have this experience firsthand. So yeah, I met lots of amazing, beautiful people. However, there were also people that worked in head office, especially PR, that were, as you can imagine, just really up themselves, to be frank. And then you have the celebrities that you do makeup on, and again, just met a wide range of characters. There were people, again, because I got to work in some of the best stores, we were the only ones that would be trusted to do the celebrity makeup, so they would never be sent to a counter or a department store or anything like that. Maybe with the exception of Selfridges, but even then it's not ideal because it's so public. So it would always be the freestanding flagship stores that would be trusted with celebrity makeup, and also because we had the best of the best in our stores. And there'll be some celebrities who were just as lovely as you could imagine, and then there were other ones that were just complete nightmares. But the long and short of it is, yes, there are mean and catty people in the beauty industry. However, I'm not naive to the fact that there are those people in other industries, but inevitably, like I said, you'll probably get more of those people in the beauty industry and fashion industry versus people in working in the library or for charities, for example. What's the reality of working in the beauty industry? So again, I slightly covered this with part one when I was talking about my experience. Some people, including myself, are very naive when they first go into beauty, thinking that it's literally just about doing beautiful makeovers and then, filming a little cute reel, posting it on social media, and that's your Monday to Friday, or in this case actually weekends were the busiest, Tuesday to Sunday, and that's it. It's just a cute little job. And I guess there is an element of that, but actually it's very, very, very business orientated. There is a pressure to constantly perform, and by that I mean constantly hit your KPIs, know your KPIs, know why you're performing, know why you're not performing. And then as a manager, when I eventually became a manager, there was not only a pressure to know my own KPIs, but a pressure to know every single team member's KPIs and know overall why my team were performing or why they weren't performing, etc. So that was really, really, really tough. There were a few times where I had staff members whose KPIs weren't great because of the inevitable. They were lazy, they weren't bothered, they were demotivated, and that's inevitable because this equals that, right? But there were occasions where it genuinely wasn't due to what they were doing or a lack of. And in a way, the KPIs weren't reflecting their effort. And that was really challenging for a lot of my team members. And for example, one of those challenges that was completely out of our hands was often a lack of stock, especially in one of the brands. And it was just so frustrating when you have customers coming in specifically asking for something, and not only do you not have it in stock, but not knowing when it'll be in stock. So that was really, really, really challenging. And it was always out of our control. So the overall head office would always expect you to perform, but at the same time you have rival stores all around you that were offering discounts that you weren't able to offer. There's the store sale, the online sales, which were always going on, so you're always competing with that, where you don't have the same perks as they do, and free delivery. Then you have rival brands that were having membership points or memberships in general and membership perks. then you have a lack of stock. So of course, a customer might come in and get the full shebang done. They don't obviously realize, or perhaps they don't care, that the person that has just spent an hour making them look and feel beautiful ultimately has to explain at the end of that session why they haven't made money. And the reason why is because the customer, although she got her service done at the store, wants to then buy all the items online because there's a 10% discount. Or if she goes into Space NK, she can use her points and then get like some free products. And in a way, you can't blame the customer to an extent, but it was really, really hard for the staff members. And then when you try to explain that to head office, they don't care. So that's the reality of the beauty industry. And if anyone tries to say otherwise, you're either working for a very saintly brand that doesn't care about money, that doesn't care about statistics, or you're just in a delusional bubble. And that's the truth of it. I'm sure there's more that I haven't covered in terms of the realities, but if anybody wants me to be more specific about a particular area, then please feel free to comment down below. Does higher retail cost mean a superior product? This is a really good question, and it's something that I've kind of been asked on some of my reviews or videos in roundabout ways in the past. I think it really depends on the product and who is making it. So in some cases, the answer is an absolute no, as in higher retail cost doesn't necessarily mean a superior product. Quite often, and you guys will know this, you're paying for a brand name and the prestige of owning that brand rather than, paying for a high quality product. Many brands, some luxe, some high streets, actually share the same factories, but they will have a different price point simply because of the brand name. And that's just a fact. And then sometimes you pay more for the packaging, you pay more for marketing, including the use of influencers, which is something I'll cover afterwards. And then in other cases, you literally pay for what you get. So that includes high quality ingredients, expensive ingredients, sometimes patented ingredients, a high-tech lab, the science and technology that goes behind an ingredient or behind a product. So it really depends. So I would just say that it really depends on the product and the brand. You just really have to be savvy as a consumer now and do your own research or watch reviews and get your information that way. But either way, a mix of the two is great, where you watch reviews, you get the general gist of a product, then you can do your own research as well. In terms of retail cost and in terms of the luxurious brands, and because one thing that I always and often get asked about is foundations, because some people that I know use like drugstore brands and I know that it works for them. And I'm not saying that all drugstore foundations are terrible, that's not the case. I've repeated this time and time again that really you should invest in skincare and foundation if you're going to invest in anything, because they sit on your face all day. And most good foundation brands these days will include an element of skincare in it, and it's like different foundation choices to suit your particular skin type to make sure that it's not clogging your pores, it's not giving you a reaction, and it's giving you the finish and the look that you want all day. So I would really invest in skincare and foundation, like I said. But as for eye makeup like eyeshadows, lipsticks, etc., you don't necessarily need high-end products. You can use drugstore brands because they're pigmented enough. The difference may just be like not as high quality ingredients or like a more stronger perfume smell, which is just my pet peeve. And again, you may want to look into ingredients if you have sensitive eyes in terms of eyeshadows or eye makeup in general, but generally speaking, you don't have to, I'd say, waste your money on expensive eyeshadows and lipsticks versus foundation and skincare. I'm obviously just generalizing it because all of these questions are so amazing that I could really do a deep dive into every single one of them and go on and on and on and on about it. But I just want to kind of summarize each question. And I'd love literally for you guys to comment down below, because a lot of my viewers are very savvy. You guys are very knowledgeable, very intelligent. You guys are very perceptive and aware of what's going on in the beauty industry, and sometimes I learn from you guys, so I always like to hear different perspectives, but please, as always, just keep it polite. The next question is the waste and how to deal with that as a consumer. Now this is a very deep question. It's one of those deep questions, and I'm going to answer it as best as I can and based upon my opinions, but obviously there might be some of you who are way more environmentally conscious and aware of waste than I am. You are welcome to comment down below and add your opinions or experiences, etc. So I would say the following, that if you are super conscious, I think everyone should be conscious of waste, but if you are one of those people that are particularly conscious about waste, this is what I would recommend. And again, this is based on my opinion, so it's not that these are the only tips that you should follow. Absolutely go and read up on it yourself, research it yourself. So I would suggest that you only buy from brands, which sounds really obvious, that are actively into sustainable beauty, that proactively talk about it, they're proactive about being environmentally conscious, those who think about minimal packaging, waste, and recyclable products. It's a difficult but relevant question because if you are a consumer, you are inevitably a part of the chain of consumerism, which is inevitably going to equal waste, right? So an obvious next tip is only buy what you need. And that might sound really obvious, but in this day and age, it's so easy to buy into marketing and brands making you think you need something when in fact you don't. The truth of the matter is. And that's the power of marketing. For example, with skincare, I'd recommend using a toner, a serum, moisturizer, eye cream, and oil of some kind only if you're dry skinned, and then SPF. So for some of you it'll be 6, for some of you it'll be 5 products. And even then, you can mix and match and sometimes remove something to give your skin a break or add something to extra hydrate your skin, whatever. But generally, those are the products I would recommend for a skincare routine. However, most of us probably have an essence, a retinol, an extract of something or another. And I just feel like sometimes products are marketed in different ways. So ultimately, you're using 2 serums, but because they're called 2 different things, you're using both when ultimately you only need one of those, if that makes sense. For example, a serum could otherwise be called an elixir. A toner could be called an essence. I know that sometimes various products do perform different functions, but like I just said, other times they are literally the same thing, same product, doing the same thing, ultimately with this different name. So do your research, because I know with the current marketing and the amount of makeup brands and products that there are out there, we are living in an age of choice. We are living in an age of consumerism. So I know it's increasingly difficult to just buy one foundation, one eyeshadow, one lipstick. I can almost bet that for all of you who are watching right now, none of you can confidently say, I only have one foundation. And by the way, that includes a skin tint, that includes a BB cream or a CC cream. You know, you'll have more than one eyeshadow, you'll have more than one lipstick, you'll have more than one blush, you'll have more than one highlighter. Do you know? So this is the thing. If you really are into waste and wanting to minimize waste and be the change, I guess, then only buy what you need. And before I move on to the following tips, I think it's only right that at this point I add and address the fact that I am guilty, I guess, of being an aider in encouraging purchases. For example, you may see a review of my lipstick and think that you want to buy it because it looks good on me. But you guys know, if you've been following me for a while, that I am honest with my reviews, and therefore you know that I would never recommend a product that I think is rubbish. I also think that because I'm honest with my reviews, there have been many times where I've actually done the opposite and put you guys off from buying. I know that for a fact from reading your comments, where you guys have thanked me for my honesty and said that as a result of my review you won't be buying the product anymore, even though previously you were interested. I know that there's times where you guys see a lip collection, for example, and you're enticed by all these beautiful colors and non-natural light swatches, and then the second that I show you my swatches and say like there's like, I don't know, 10 shades, and then you were interested in perhaps 5, perhaps would have considered at least buying 3, but because of my natural light or daylight swatches, you were like, actually I'm only realistically going to wear 2 of them, so you buy 2. So you can see that through my reviews, although I would, and some of you would consider me an aider of purchases, you may also agree that I do the opposite, which is discourage from spontaneous purchase as well, I would hope. Moving on to more tips about waste. Be realistic about what you'd ideally wear or use, which is kind of in line with the point I just made. But for example, if you mostly wear nude lipsticks and that's your comfort zone, If you suddenly purchase a red lipstick, how often are you likely to wear that, if at all? So that's considered a waste. A gift product you aren't likely to use. It's better to gift it to somebody who is going to use it than holding on to it, thinking you're going to wear it one day, and then 5 years later it's still in your drawer gathering dust and perhaps has now gone off by now. Some brands also offer very pretty packaging, so to avoid waste, some brands actually give you the option to just go for the basic bare minimum packaging that's normally recyclable, or the pretty packaging that looks great for gifting, right? So I normally only choose that option if I'm gifting it to someone else, but otherwise I go for the minimal packaging. And generally speaking, I prefer the minimal packaging in terms of recycling and having to deal with it afterwards. The only times I will choose a product and choose the option for the pretty packaging is if it's one that I can reuse or repurpose. Instead of throwing away the box or the packaging, I've used it to store accessories, jewelry, even makeup. So just think about those things. It's not just about the product, it can also be about the packaging that it comes in. Also, buy refills. I like to generally buy the biggest, so say like shampoo and conditioner, I generally like to buy the biggest bottle. And then instead of rebuying that bottle once I've run out, I'll then use that as like my main container, and then I'll buy refills. So then and normally the refill packaging is always better and more environmentally friendly than the actual bottle itself. So that's an option. Also, I've noticed brands don't often do like travel size products that are refillable, which is just my biggest pet peeve, because often they're perfect size for travel. They are something that I just want to keep and reuse time and time again. But not only is it not refillable, or they don't have a refillable option, the packaging itself doesn't allow you to refill it because the hole is normally, or dispenser is normally tiny. So my tip for that is buying like a syringe. There's like often beauty syringes. If you live in Asia, I normally get all my beauty stuff from Daiso. The Japanese one I'm not really like a fan of, but the Korean one is brilliant in terms of like everything you need is there. So I bought some beauty syringes from Daiso, and they are thin enough to suck up the product from your full-size product and then dispense back into the travel size product. And again, that's like minimizing waste, so that every time you go on holiday you don't buy another packaging and throw it away, you just keep using the same one, for example. So that's another tip. And finally, another tip is like, don't buy into trends. And I think that is so common and easy to do. Like, only buy products that are suitable for your skin, for example. So if you purchase foundations because they're trending, or you saw your favorite celebrity person wearing it and they looked stunning, or because it's a bestseller, or because a particular brand promises that you'll look mesmerizing, it's a waste. So only buy products, especially with skincare and foundations, that are suitable for your skin type and not things that are trending, because 9 times out of 10, the chances are, unless you have really, really good skin where you can just like literally go to the garden, slap mud on your face and your skin doesn't react, and you know, generally you have smooth skin, unless it's that kind of situation, that foundation most likely isn't going to be good for you. So do your research into what kind of foundation it is. Don't believe the hype when brands say that it's good for all skin types. No, not really, it's not. It can be more suitable for a particular skin type, or suit maybe like several skin types, but all skin types is impossible. And as always, I always recommend read the ingredients, please, especially if you have sensitive skin, and do your own research. The next question is, how many products are original products versus companies copying others? Now, this is really, really hard to answer on one hand, because I don't have evidence to call out this brand and that brand of copying each other. But obviously, when a brand brings out a particular product, say in, I don't know, 2013, and then a second brand, a completely different brand, brings out what looks almost like this exact same product in 2017, it doesn't take a genius to like question the fact that the second company may have copied or been inspired by the first company, right? So there are many brands like that. I also know that with Beauty Pie, it's not necessarily them copying, it could be the same factory. And there have been many times where I used to review Beauty Pie a lot more, and there are dupes dupes galore. For example, the Charlotte Tilbury ones, the contouring one and the highlight ones, when I did my review on the Beauty Pie ones, they are exact dupes of the Charlotte Tilbury one, but a fraction of the price. The only difference is I think contour wise, Beauty Pie has 3 contour shades and they don't always stock. Beauty Pie often have stock issues. That's another pet peeve. But with the highlight, as far as I'm aware, they had 1 or 2, which is a lot more limited to the number of highlights that Charlotte Tilbury have. Like Charlotte Tilbury has enough highlights to highlight the whole earth. Like that's how many highlights she has. There are certainly dupes. There are certainly brands that use the same factories, which I touched upon earlier. There are companies that have products that look like identical twins, including same ingredients, but they're in different orders. And then, you know, once I mentioned a review and did a comparison of 2 brands that essentially had the same pencil really, and then die-hard fans just sort of had to go at me because they were like, it's different because it's different ratios. And I get that to an extent, but let's be real, it's still pretty much the same thing. And interestingly, they perform the same. So it's not like because they had different ratios that one pencil was like way better or longer wearing than the other. Let's just be real for a second. So yeah, there is definitely an element of it, but like I said, I don't have exact facts or exact statistics and percentages or graphs to show you guys, but this is my experience of it and my knowledge of it. Thoughts on influencers receiving PR products. So I am definitely guilty of receiving products. However, I've said this again, time and time again, that I am an influencer. I don't even consider myself an influencer. I'm a blogger. I do enable purchases sometimes, but I consider myself a blogger. I do honest reviews. I don't consider myself an influencer in the modern day sense. But I've said this time and time again that I will not collaborate with a brand or partner with them if I do not like the product. I was recently approached by a brand asking how much they could pay me for a review, and I just flat out told them that I don't do payments. That might change in the future, I don't know, and I will be transparent with you guys if that ever changes. I told them I'm not taking payments. However, I want to only agree to do a review because I like your brand, A, B, because you're giving me permission to say what I want, and only C, if I get to choose my own products, and they allowed all 3 of those conditions. So that's why I agreed to do a collaboration. But actually I've turned down many collaborations. There was actually a really big beauty brand that approached me to be almost like one of their ambassadors, not the ambassador, obviously I'm not famous enough, but one of their ambassadors. And I was really honest. They clearly hadn't watched my reviews. They just clearly liked the fact that I reviewed their brand, the fact that I clearly do like their brand, and the fact that they clearly approved of some of the pictures of myself of wearing their products. But I was honest and said, I have reviewed your brand negatively because, you know, I and a lot of my viewers have had really bad experiences with your customer service team, and I just feel like it'll be really inauthentic for me to say yes to your brand right now, and therefore I just wanted to let you know. And they were like, thank you very much for letting us know, and that was pretty much it. So trust me when I say I am going to put integrity and transparency and honesty ahead of trying to put myself ahead as a blogger or influencer. I do think that there are so many influencers now that literally live off PR products. On one hand, I do understand it because a lot of influencers, unlike myself, they live off content creating. And for the ones who live off it, it means that they are earning quite a bit to be able to live off it full time. I certainly am not at that stage. To some element, it means that they have to, right? Because it's their bread and butter. So I really try not to judge, because I know that there are influencers out there who, like myself, will only work with brands and products that they genuinely like and will promote that. However, on the opposite spectrum of that, I have seen and witnessed many influencers that work with every brand and any brand that comes towards them. And every single YouTube video, every single Instagram video is literally like a walking advert. And that's when I think it becomes blurry and it's very unprofessional, actually, because to me, it feels very inauthentic when you're lying to your viewers, because inevitably a lot of these brands they want you obviously to say nice things about their product or say nice things about their brand. So 9 times out of 10, if these influencers are receiving especially money as a payment, and as well as free products, but money, they are going to be more obliged to say something nice about the brand. And I don't like how that works. I know it's an inevitable part of marketing, but it frustrates me no end. And I remember one time I worked for a brand and the PR team were working around this huge campaign around a very, very anticipated product, very hyped at the time. And they had taken a group of influencers to another country. I believe they were put up in a 5-star hotel. Food was obviously paid for, accommodation, travel, everything was paid for. And I just remember there's this really, really famous influencer. Again, I'm not going to say names. To this day, this person is not only extremely famous, but has their own beauty line, just to put it out there. And this influencer was invited upon on this PR trip. I remember me and my colleagues were laughing about it, kind of bitterly, but laughing about the whole thing and how ironic it was, because they had used this influencer and this person had literally been paid, put up in a 5-star hotel, had a free holiday essentially, free products, free food, everything, free holiday basically. And I think they posted one post. I think it was literally a picture of them just holding the product. I don't even think they applied it. And it was an eye product. At the time they had false lashes on. So it just, everything seemed really inauthentic. And then either the next day or that week at the very least, they then went on to promote another eye product for another brand, a rival brand. It just felt so inauthentic. So if I were that, I'm not a fan of that influencer, but if I were to be a fan of that influencer, and by the way, not because I dislike them, but I'm not into their content, but I know they have so many fans. Now, I know that if I were that person's audience, fan, follower, viewer, whatever, I would have found that so inauthentic if I had witnessed that or known more about it, if that makes sense. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on PR products. It's a long topic, it's a long discussion, but hey ho, just know that for you guys who watch me and follow my content, I would never agree to collaborate or partner with a brand that I didn't believe in or where I didn't like the products. I would rather just not post it at all, rather not give it the time of day. How can I become a makeup artist? And there's another question, how can I work as a makeup artist, which kind of is like the same question in a way. I would highly recommend, if you don't have any experience, to take up a makeup course wherever you are in the world and go for a reputable school. I mean, unless you want to be a really professional makeup artist and that's going to be your bread and butter in the long term, I don't think you need to invest in really expensive schools. Like I said, unless that's going to be your long-term goal. But at least go to a school, a makeup school, that is reputable enough that the brands will recognize them within the industry, if that makes sense. So that's one way to do it. And the second way to do it is literally just gain experience, gain first-hand experience. Like you sitting there and doing your makeup on YouTube, and I know you can develop your skills like that. And I know a lot of people on BBC's Glow Up, and that's how they got their experience. But it's one thing to do makeup on yourself, and it's a whole nother thing to do makeup on another person. It's one thing to do prosthetics and like all this like intricate makeup that looks like art, which is amazing. And I know that's difficult, extremely challenging. You have to be extremely skilled, but it's a whole nother thing to make your skin look like skin, to know the undertones of skin, to cancel out dark circles, to do an eye look based upon different eye shapes and different lid types. That's a whole nother level, skill set level. To do a red lipstick perfectly. Don't underestimate how hard those skills are. And those skills won't be learnt until you actually apply makeup on the shop floor. It's one thing to be on a program like Glow Up and have 3-4 hours on a challenge, or at least 2 hours. On the beauty shop floor, you're often given, well, in my day, you were given 45 minutes max to do a full look. And by the way, during that time, you're constantly being pulled away to deal with and put through like items through the till for customers who just want to simply grab and go. You're constantly having to pick up the phone. You're constantly being pulled away for colleagues. I was, because I was a manager. There's constantly distractions or people, other customers who walk in, doesn't want their makeup done but have questions to ask. So that 45 minutes ends up being even less time, especially on peak days like the weekends or evenings after work. So it's a real skill, and the only way you can learn that is to be on the front line and work on a counter or in a shop. And like I said, freestanding stores are unlikely to accept people who don't have any experience, who don't have like any makeup courses, but counters are generally a little bit more easier. So department stores, counters, and then even then there's a grade of department stores. So Selfridges won't accept you, but perhaps John Lewis will. John Lewis might not accept you, but perhaps Debenhams will. I mean, Debenhams used to be a department store in the UK. If you're from the UK, you'll know what I'm talking about. So it's not to downgrade those of you or people you know who work in those places. Talking about my experiences from what I know. So yeah, if you can't do the course, at least get first-hand experience. And in that way, if you work in a beauty store, even for 6 months, you can move on and you've got 6 months worth of beauty experience, right? So that's my advice on how you can become a makeup artist. I also was heavily influenced by Lisa Eldridge. Many of you will know this. And I used to just watch all her videos and soak up everything that she taught, because she's obviously a makeup artist that still works in the industry to this day, that works on real people, live faces. And so I used to soak it up. I used to write down on a notebook all her tips and tricks, all her advice, products that she would recommend. So that's another way to learn. But generally, I would say live experience is the best. And then how you can work as a makeup artist, apply everywhere. I had many occasions where I had makeup artists walk into the store, onto counters, literally armed with a CV, ready to go. Now, my biggest advice, especially as someone who used to have makeup art manager experience, where I used to accept those CVs, unless I was away where staff members would take it on my behalf, I would be the one to go up and look at them and say hello to them, because I would want to see them firsthand. Now, make sure when you're giving your CV, business card, or whatever it may be, that it's professional. So put effort into it. Maybe put effort into a cover letter. Make sure it's not crinkled. Put it in a professional folder so that you're not just giving them some crumpled up, what looks like garbage in their hand. The way you look is so important. Unfortunately, it's the truth. If you come looking really disheveled, like you rolled out of bed at 2 p.m, it's not a great vibe. If you're not giving good eye contact, if you're giving yes, it's not a good impression. So make sure your impression is really good in the first time. Make sure when you interview, and if you are given an interview, you respond quickly to emails, any phone call requests that they have. You dress well on the interview day. And if there are grooming guidelines, even if they don't say that you should dress like that, follow the grooming guidelines if you can, because we looked at that. Absolutely. Don't be late. Fundamentals. Don't be late for an interview. And if you are running late, be courteous and call in ahead. And so these are life skills and skills in general, and things that fall into the manner category that you should be doing and following anyway, regardless of the industry. But it's so important in the beauty industry, particularly. If you have a portfolio, take it along, showcase your work, be proud of it. More than anything, when you go to an interview, it blew my mind how many times people did not research the company that they were applying for. So one of the questions that most companies, regardless of the company, regardless of the industry, regardless of the size of the company, will ask you is, do you know anything about our company? Do you know anything about our brand? And the amount of times that I had to suppress my facial expression and a really deep eye roll was when people were like, no, ... So yeah, regardless of which job you go for, research the company, and not just the surface level stuff. If you can whack out a fact or a statistic or something that is not commonly known in the media, you are going to impress the interviewer more than you will ever know. And why you want to work for the brand. Don't say because you just need a job. That might sound really obvious, but don't just say that, because then that just tells the interviewer all you want is money and the job. And that might be the case, but sell it like you want the job. Like, I have always wanted to work for this brand because I truly respect whatever it is. Anyway, so that's my main tips. But if any of you work in the makeup industry, previously have currently work in the makeup industry, I'd love to know any tips and tricks for this particular question down below. And lastly, have you met any famous makeup artists or people in the industry? Yes. So like I said in part 1, I met Bobby Brown when I worked at Bobby. I met Francois Nars and his right-hand woman when I worked at Nars. I met Anastasia, I want to say Saul, I'm really sorry if I didn't pronounce her name correctly, Saul, the founder of Anastasia Beverly Hills. I met her at an event in Selfridges and she was so lovely and complimented my skin, I just wanted to die. And then I met Pat McGrath, again so lovely, at an event at Selfridges again, and she was really, really nice and it was a dream to meet her. I met Mario, I can't pronounce his surname, but you guys know who I'm talking about, the Kardashians makeup artist. It was a quick like cattle, like one in, one out kind of thing. So I met him. Lisa Eldridge, you guys will know or may know that I've met her quite a few times. I've met Alex Steiner and I've met her a few times and she's super lovely. Again, I remember one time she complimented my skin and she was like, it's glowing, where'd you get that glow from? I had to be honest and I was like, I literally got it from like the Bakerloo line. And it's true, for those of you Londoners and people who travel or commute on the tube in London, you know how stuffy the Bakerloo line is. So yeah, that day I couldn't even accredit my glow to any skincare products specifically. It was literally the underground. And I feel like I've met more people, but I just can't think off the top of my head. If I remember, I'll write it down below. But those are the people I've met. But yeah, let me know down below. I think that's it. And I hope I've covered everything. It's been so long filming these 2 episodes that, as you can see, it's slowly progressively gotten dark as I've filmed. So thank you for bearing with me. Normally light is really important in my videos, but this is me just talking about my experiences and answering your questions, so lighting isn't really that relevant, right? If there's anything you want to ask me further to clarify down below, please let me know. If there's anything that you guys want to perhaps expand on, things that I've said down below, great. Anything you can contribute knowledge-wise, experience-wise, that'd be fabulous. But I hope you've enjoyed this episode, part 1 and part 2, on the truth about the beauty industry. I will link down below my blogs, part 1 and part 2. Part 1, if you want to have a laugh, hopefully it makes you laugh, it's about the different types of customers. Do go have a read. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this. I'd love to know your thoughts and have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for watching and take care.